everybody's doing something different online. I mean, somebody could say you're making good money from holding conflicts and shouting matches that play into the inguinal desire for combat, and in a certain sense, we're all making money doing something, hopefully. The problem is, what is anyone's intention?
I was watching Piers Morgan, Dave Smith, and some other propagandist type dude on the Piers Morgan show earlier today. And the title was Hypocrite. Now, I don't have the exact time code in here, but I'm going to slide it to Colby. This is how we're going to do it live. The guy between Smith and Weinstein, I want to see his first remarks and how Dave responds to it, because he's obviously a defender of the establishment who has not been read into the situation. So I guess like he holds the ball while Dave kicks it, I guess is his job. And then I do want to hear the comments when he brings on Weinstein at the end of the show. So really, we're just going to catch like a little bit of the interaction. It's like a debate between the defender and Dave Smith, and then cut to after they kick that dude off the show and they bring in Eric Weinstein. Please. Let's see how this works. Professional show would probably figure that all out ahead of time, but I just thought of it. So we're doing it live, like Bill O'Reilly would want us to.
Urban Warfare Institute, who took issue with a number of Dave Smith's points and felt
okay, pause it. I'm sorry. He's from the Urban Warfare Institute. There was a time when I had the Peace Revolution podcast, and Podomatic would have rankings of the top podcasts. I'm still the #1 ranked podcast in higher education, but I was always kind of besmirked by who was always #2 back when I was actively publishing. It was like it's like the British War College. It was like the War College of the British Empire was the #2 podcast. So I always liked that the Peace Revolution was just one step ahead of the warmongers. This guy apparently comes from the Urban Warfare Warmonger Academy Institute, and he's a highfalutin graduate, because that's the type of propaganda he spews. Go ahead and lay it back in there.
By Douglas Murray, and the other is Dave Smith himself, host of Part of the Problem, who's a comedian and libertarian commentator, and he felt, of course, that he remained epically intact, and will be joined a little later by Eric Weinstein. So let me start. First of all, Dave Smith, are you surprised, Dave, about the reaction to your showdown with Douglas Murray, and do you believe you won?
That's not a factual statement at all, because it doesn't even include the base information. So it's almost like, you just don't know the information you need to know to make that judgment. And, let's forget comparing it to a domestic situation like Dave continues to do on Joe Rogan, Lex Fridman, others. Like, if somebody killed my kids and I know where he's at, and I go to that apartment building and I kill everybody in it, that's murder. And that's what Israel is doing. And that's not true. Even you, Piers, have commented about Israel striking something and saying, look at the number of civilians, that's not acceptable. That's not how war works. It's not even how you would assess that situation, because it completely rules out what the law of war says about proportionality, about assessing what is the target, who is that individual, what's his value, concrete value.
I always listen to these things and think, what would I say? And right there, I was thinking, I could act confused. I could feign ignorance and say something like, can you describe the uniform of Hamas? Because you guys are fighting a military battle, right? Do they have a Army, a Navy, a Air Force? Do they have uniforms? What do they got? What do they got to come out and play war with you guys? Is it anywhere on equal par? If you saw, one side's got like ping pong balls and the other one has like explosive grenades, you might not think that's like sporting if you were watching it as an observer.
They have inflatable condoms with helium.
Sponsored by our tax dollars is what they have. It is not a comparison of military forces. So I don't know how there's like a war going on when half the population is under 18. And, all the arguments have to be brought in after World War II, because no one can talk about the real colonization that we have shown on this show ad nauseum. Like, hopefully You guys know this chapter and verse. The international banking family from both France and Britain collaborated through the Sykes-Picot Treaty to take away a bunch of people's land that wasn't theirs. And then they gave it to a third party who received stolen goods and continues to this day to carry out ethnic cleansing and genocide. But, you know, if you want to pretend, we could pretend, which is what this guy wants you to do. Go ahead and continue to let it play.
Everybody's doing something different online. I mean, somebody could say you're making good money from holding conflicts and shouting matches that play into the inguinal desire for combat, you know, and in a certain sense, we're all making money doing something, hopefully. The problem is, what is anyone's intention? And one of the problems of knowing Daryl Cooper is that the shitposting Daryl Cooper and the thoughtful Daryl Cooper are not always the same person, easily reconciled. Many people talk about having sort of, yeah, this is the way I am online, this is the way I am in a different place. And, you know, the odd thing about that is that this mirrors a tradition in academics that is not much discussed, which is the esoteric exoteric tradition, in which typically a scholar behaves one way in the seminar room and another way when his or her words might influence policy.
All right, so this is one of my favorite parts because this is where the guy's like, Dave has no step-by-step method of thinking that leads to his conclusion. That may or may not be true, but I have a step-by-step method that leads to a conclusion, and it includes a whole bunch of things that guy would not want to talk about in an interview. If you're going to talk about people breaching borders and doing that sort of stuff, like, what's our time frame? What's our time frame on this discussion? Does everything start on 10/7? Because I would argue the jurisdiction of that showcasing, because I think there's credible, relevant, triggering events that had gone on well before 10/7. So you can't judge 9/11 by what happened on that day, just like you can't judge 10/7 by what happened on that day, because there were triggering events that happened leading up to that. And when you have triggering events, that's one thing. When you have military stand downs in both 9/11 and 10/7 that are convenient to advancing a military agenda that the other side was not asking or prepared for, that again seems like bullying. You know, if you take a country that was just beaten up in World War I and then you build them up, let them remilitarize, encourage them that you're going to help them and be their ally, they start a fight, and then you're like, I don't know what you're talking about. You know, you could research Rudolph Hess in his time in Spandau prison, because I think there was another devious culprit in World War II who is not held with his name in infamy. And it might be a guy like, I don't know, do I have to dig out a book by
You know, this Piers Morgan show is like the modern day equivalent of the Jerry Springer show, man.
Yeah, I mean, Winston Churchill, if you think he's all as rosy, like there's some, you know, there were some dirty deeds done dirt expensive back in the day. But he comes from a long family line of that. Randolph Churchill was quite a mover and shaker before Winnie got on the scene. So there's a heredity, there's a genealogy, there's a long, ominous continuity of history of people like him thinking that the English-speaking language should dominate all peoples of color. If you're looking for the roots of institutionalized racism, that comes from the people that employed this guy to be their prime minister. So there is some credible evidence on these topics that should be talked about in a public forum and not just like dismissed or poo-pooed by people like Douglas Murray, who obviously is Oxford educated. And, you know, so you can't say he's never been there. He's been to Oxford, and that's the central organizing culprit in the Cecil Rhodes legacy of globalism. So, yeah, don't get gaslit by people who've been there and done that and refuse to tell you that it exists.
And I've been there.
Never been there. I thought we wore that
I missed out on that
but it
whole-
still wears well.
I got to throw in some of those this week because I missed out last week. You
You got to say it like butthead, though.
Bean. We've never been there, baby.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah. All right, so now we'll have to cover Mike Judge, filmmaking, history, and movies next. That'd be a good interview for Rogan. Has he interviewed Mike Judge? I don't think I ever saw that one.
I think so. I could have sworn. Maybe not.
Well,
He
that
definitely
wasn't.
has.
And then Colby, cue up the last part of this episode with Weinstein for after Paul and I talk here. Go ahead, Paul.
I was just commenting that, Mike Judge has definitely been on Rogan, I think.
Episode
in the past.
1835 and 1570.
Took the words right out of my mouth. Thank you, Scott. No, that's good. It's pretty good. Mike Judge is like one of the legends because he's like someone kind of like Robert Rodriguez. There's all these Austin talents that managed to break through into the Hollywood system, but they steadfastly refuse to go to Hollywood and actually live there and participate in all that stuff. And they somehow get this creative autonomy that allows them to create the projects they want, even ones that sort of bite the hand that feeds it. And because their sheer talent and sheer will and perseverance, they just keep bringing all these awesome projects to fruition.
You know, doing an imitation of Beavis and Butthead, I've gained insight into the comedic vehicle of Beavis and Butthead and why it is so ingenious, because you're able to come from a position of just complete lunacy and idiocracy, if I dare use that word in context of Mike Judge, but it's like, therefore you're able to provide a multi-layer commentary. And so you're making fun of and satirizing, like with what I'm doing, like current events, but then therefore you're able to, it's like a multi-layer level of satire that is delivered from idiots, but it's just like, it's so complicated. It's just so genius that why Beavis and Butthead, because they're so dumb, I don't know if I'm articulating this right, but like, because they're so dumb, you have to be like super smart with the comedy, and it just lands in a way that nothing else does. I think that's just the genius of Beavis and Butthead, is that it just, because it's so dumb, it's like you have to, like, it has to come from like a genius spot to resonate. I don't know.
Have you seen Beavis and Butthead Do the Universe?
Yeah.
When they go into the liberal arts college and they learn about white privilege.
Yes, that's one of the greatest jokes of all time. One of the greatest bits of all time. Whoa. We have white privilege, Beavis?
Give me your food. I'm exercising my white privilege.
Yeah, you're like, don't worry, ma'am. We have white privilege. It's so great.
Things you can only do in a cartoon.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure they'll make a movie at some point. When people are too old to care or remember, they'll be like, oh, look, new Hollywood star in Beavis and Butthead. And
they got Ryan Gosling. Ryan Gosling as in the Beavis and Butthead pair from Saturday Night Live, and that was probably one of their better sketches in the last few years.
Nothing beats John Lovitz playing Prince Charles. That was such a deep sixth clip that it took us a long time to be able to find it, but I bet we could use Clip Genie at some point tonight, and we could find the Saturday Night Live. That should be the only reference to Saturday Night Live in Grand Theft World's 2,000 hours of history, but we should be able to find it with Clip Genie. gtw.clipgenie.com.
No, we've referenced it before. We referenced it before because I remember I was dating this gal. She was awake to all.
Yeah, that sounds hot.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. But she was like super cool, way into the anti-vax stuff, but she was so into pop culture. And she wanted me to sit there and watch Saturday Night Live with her. She sent me clips of Saturday Night Live. I'm like, I'm not watching this, okay? I'm not watching it. And it got to like a point where I'm like, okay, you know what? I don't think this is going to work out. Like over like her pop culture obsession. Like we sit there and watch reality TV. So I broke up with her like over Saturday Night Live. And then like that night on Grand Theft World, there was a Saturday Night Live clip. And I was like, oh God, I can't escape. I just thought that was really ironic and very.
It was following you. It was following you, but it wasn't this clip with John Lovitz.
No, definitely not.
And who else is in it? It doesn't matter. We'll see it at some point, and we'll be able to watch it. But somebody plays Heinz Kiss. Oh, Tony Danza's in it. Tony Danza's in it. That's right. Before Who's the Boss, I'm pretty sure that was back in the day when he was still doing Taxi. So we will find it with the Clip Genie because the audience deserves the best of these types of selections. It's a very censored clip. They do not want you to watch this clip, nor make the connection to the East India Company that there might be some validity behind the rumor that they spent a budget on SNL to poison the well. That's exactly what the skit is. It's a poisoning of the well in case you ever came in contact with the narco-terrorism real history, underground history of America.
Twice a year, I teach a course called Autonomy. It's a 12-week course. It teaches leadership, entrepreneur skills, executive skills, all these types of things that I saw were taken out of our education system in order to make the schooling or indoctrination system that we've all probably went through. And it has served us well enough to be interchangeable cogs in the machine of the globalists. But if we want a homestead, if we want write our own ticket, work from home job, work from anywhere type of situation, they're not exactly handing those out at the end of college. They give you a piece of paper and they're like, good luck. So reality is dropping us off here, but the demands of reality are up here. So I created autonomy to help people close that gap for themselves so they can level up their skills to the demands of the situations that life is putting in front of us presently. Life's demands of intellect and understanding precision and complexity are ever increasing. The schooling didn't prepare us for it. The media is not going to do anything but reinforce what schooling prepared us for. And so we're going to have to take a leadership position and take steps off the beaten path to kind of blaze our own trail in life. What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come on.